Ah, school. The hallowed halls of knowledge where young minds are molded and sometimes completely misled. Do you still believe everything you were taught in school? Well, you might want to reconsider, because today I'm taking a deep dive into some of the so-called popular educational facts to expose 25 of the biggest lies your teachers probably told you. I'm Mike with List 25, and here are 25 things schools got wrong. 25. The truth about the Brontosaurus. For decades, schools mistakenly taught us that the majestic Brontosaurus was merely a misidentified Apatosaurus. The Brontosaurus was just one casualty of the Bone Wars, a fierce rivalry between 19th century paleontologists. It wasn't until a groundbreaking 2015 study meticulously analyzed hundreds of bones that the Brontosaurus was rightfully resurrected as its own distinct species, finally reclaiming its rightful place in textbooks and our hearts. 24. The original versions of your favorite fairy tales sound very different. Your favorite fairy tales were once gruesome cautionary stories designed to talk about life's brutal realities. In the original Cinderella, for instance, the stepsisters resorted to mutilating their feet to win the prince's heart. And in the original Little Red Riding Hood, the story ended with both Red and her grandmother being devoured by the wolf, illustrating the dangers of talking to strangers. So forget glass slippers and poisoned apples. Think more along the lines of brutal consequences, wicked intentions, and a world far less forgiving than the one we're used to. 23. Komodo dragon bites. Do you remember learning about Komodo dragons in school? You probably heard their bite was deadly because of all the nasty bacteria in their saliva, right? Well, the truth is actually even more interesting. While the bacteria are certainly a factor, scientists discovered in 2009 that these giant lizards also have venom glands. Their venom prevents blood clotting and brings down their prey's blood pressure. So a Komodo dragon bite isn't just a bacterial infection, it's a venomous attack too. 22. There are more than 3 states of matter. Remember learning about the 3 states of matter in school? Solid, liquid, and gas? Well, depending on when you went to school, your education might be missing a key component, since there are actually 4 fundamental states of matter. The 4th, plasma, is actually the most common state of matter in the universe, and can be found in everything from stars to lightning bolts. And beyond those 4, scientists have now also discovered a whole range of exotic states of matter, each with their own unique properties and behaviors. 21. The Wright brothers and the first flight. You've probably heard the story of the Wright brothers making history with their first flight at Kitty Hawk. But while the Wright brothers hold the official title for first sustained controlled powered flight, they weren't the only ones reaching for the skies. A whole flock of aviators, including Alberto Santos Dumont, Samuel Langley, Clement Ader, Glenn Curtiss, and Gustav Whitehead, were also experimenting with flying machines during this era, and some even claim to have flown successfully before the Wrights. While we may never know for sure, aviation history is definitely a whole lot more complicated than our books might have led us to believe. 20. SOS. You might think SOS stands for Save Our Souls or Save Our Ship, but as it turns out, those are just hopeful interpretations. The truth is, SOS doesn't actually stand for anything. It's simply a Morse code distress signal, a sequence of dots and dashes designed to be easily transmitted and recognized in emergencies. "19. The truth about IQ tests. Most people think IQ tests measure overall intelligence, and that's not entirely accurate. IQ tests mainly assess specific cognitive abilities, like problem solving and pattern recognition, not the full spectrum of human intellect. According to some, they simply reflect how well a person performs on a given test, which leads to inaccurate labels and misguided expectations. While IQ tests can offer some insights into someone's potential, they're far from the be-all, end-all of measuring a person's intelligence. 18. The origins of the Spanish flu. The Spanish flu originated in Europe, right? Wrong. Despite its name, this deadly pandemic most likely emerged in the United States. One of the first recorded cases was in 1918 at Fort Riley, a military base in Kansas. The crowded and unsanitary conditions at the base created the perfect breeding ground for the virus to spread like wildfire. And within a short time, the Spanish flu became one of the most deadliest pandemics in human history, claiming tens of millions of lives worldwide. 17. Spicy foods and ulcers. A lot of people wrongly believe that spicy foods are the culprit behind stomach ulcers, but that's a myth that's been around for far too long. Spicy foods don't cause ulcers. In fact, they might even help prevent them. Research indicates that capsaicin, the fiery compound in chili peppers, can actually fight the bacteria that causes ulcers. Plus, being alkaline, capsaicin has the added benefit of counteracting stomach acid, the opposite of what you might expect in something that supposedly causes ulcers. 16. Antarctica is a desert. You might be surprised to learn that the defining feature of a desert is its lack of precipitation, making Antarctica, that icy wonderland at the bottom of our globe, the world's largest desert. Yeah, you heard me right. Despite being covered in snow and ice, Antarctica receives very little precipitation, less than 2 inches or 50 millimeters per year on average. So while it might not fit the typical image of a desert, its lack of rainfall qualifies it for the surprising title. 15. Your physical health and mental health are connected. Have you ever noticed how when your body's feeling down, your mind often follows suit? Or how stress can wreak havoc on your physical health? It's not a coincidence. Our minds and bodies are way more connected than we give them credit for. But here's the thing. Schools tend to focus on keeping the bodies healthy, while mental well-being gets left in the dust. The truth is that almost 1 in 3 people with a chronic physical illness also battles a mental health condition. That is huge. Ignoring this connection means missing a crucial piece of the puzzle when it comes to overall well-being. It's high time we start seeing our minds and bodies as a team and give mental health education the attention it deserves in schools. 14. Tutankhamen's death. King Tut was murdered, right? Well, no. But that was what the head wound on his mummy led everyone to believe for years. However, in 2014, after spending time with his mummy, researchers came up with a new theory, that King Tut's death was more likely due to a chariot accident and subsequent infection. As it turns out, the boy king was a bit accident-prone, and inbreeding within the royal family did not do him any favors. 13. The I before E except after C rule does not always apply. Do you remember that old spelling rule, I before E except after C? Well, now that we're all grown up, it's become clear that that rule is more of a guideline than a hard and fast law. Sure, it works in things like receive and conceded, but there are plenty of exceptions that throw a wrench in the works. Words like seize, height, and albeit all break the rule, proving that English spelling can be as unpredictable as it is fascinating. We actually did a video on that. Check that one out. Boom. 12. The Great Wall of China is not the only man-made structure visible from space. Have you ever heard that the Great Wall of China is the only man-made thing you can see from space? Yeah, me too. But guess what? That's not even remotely true. While the Great Wall is undeniably a jaw-dropping feat of ancient engineering, it is far from the only human creation visible from space. Astronauts have spotted highways, dams, cities, and even entire islands, all without needing a telescope, by the way. And also, I don't even think you can see it from space. It's literally about the width of a road. If you can't see roads from space, you're not going to see the Great Wall. Sorry. 11. The Shape of Raindrops. A raindrop shape is completely different from the tear-shaped image we usually picture. In reality, small raindrops are almost spherical, but as they grow, air resistance flattens them, making them resemble the top half of a hamburger bun. What's even more fascinating is that, according to research by James E. McDonald, when raindrops reach a certain size, they can even transform into shapes resembling tiny little parachutes before eventually breaking up into smaller drops. 10. America's independence. Are you getting ready to celebrate our independence on July 4th? Well, you might be surprised to hear that while we celebrate the 4th of July with fireworks and fanfare, the real date of America's independence is actually July 2nd. You see, that's the day the delegates of the Second Continental Congress officially voted for independence from Britain. So, while we commemorate July 4th with barbecues and parades, the true turning point in American history happened a couple days earlier. 9. Water on other planets. I'm sorry to break it to you, but Earth isn't the only planet with water, folks. Mars has ice, and even Mercury, the closest planet to the Sun, has traces of frozen water tucked away in its craters. Perhaps most surprisingly, Pluto, the dwarf planet, is believed to have more liquid water under its icy shell than all of the oceans on Earth combined. So, while we might be the only planet with surface water bustling with life, as far as we know anyway, water isn't as rare in our cosmic neighborhood as we once believed. 8. The Salem witch trials. Have you ever heard the story that moldy bread led to the Salem witch trials? I'm not kidding, some people believe this as a fact. The idea behind the theory is that everyone in Salem was basically tripping on a hallucinogenic fungus that grew on their bread, known as ergot, and that it led to the accusations and mass hysteria. Now, while that probably sounds like a convenient explanation, historians have argued that it's just not supported by the facts. The real reason behind the witch trials are way more complex, and while a bad batch of bread might make for an interesting story, the truth about what really happened in Salem is, unfortunately, much darker and a whole lot more complicated. 7. The Pilgrims Clothing. Contrary to popular belief, those iconic black and white outfits with big buckles were not worn by the Pilgrims on a daily basis. The somber suits and buckled hats were actually reserved for Sundays, or special occasions, and that was if they had any at all. Back in the 1600s, black fabric was super expensive and hard to get, so most colonists sported much more colorful and varied clothing when it came to their day-to-day wear. 6. The Three Wise Men. You know the story of the three wise men visiting baby Jesus in a manger, right? As it turns out, that classic Christmas story might need a bit of a rewrite. The Bible doesn't mention that there were three of them, nor does it call them kings. Instead, it calls them magi. These mysterious magi were likely astrologers who interpreted the stars to guide them on their journey. And instead of showing up at the nativity scene, they probably arrived days or even weeks later when Jesus was already a bit older. 5. Iron Maidens. Do you know what an Iron Maiden is? Not the band. I'm talking about that spiked coffin-shaped contraption that was supposedly used for torture. It's the stuff in nightmares, right? Well, the Iron Maiden might not be as terrifying as you think, apart from the way it looks, of course. In fact, there's no evidence these gruesome devices existed before the 1800s. Historians believe the idea was likely invented in the 19th century, possibly to demonize earlier eras, or simply to create a sensational story. Their use as torture devices? More myth than historical fact. 4. The truth about bagpipes. When you hear the word bagpipes, you instantly conjure images of kilts, highlands, and all things Scottish, right? Well, it might be time to broaden your musical horizons. While Scotland's great Highland bagpipes are undeniably iconic, they're far from the first of their kind. The earliest versions of this instrument actually hail from ancient Egypt, and variations can be found in cultures around the globe, from Ireland and Bulgaria to India, and they all have their own unique sounds. 3. Water and electricity. You might think that water and electricity are a dangerous mix, but that's not entirely true. Pure water, the kind without any dissolved minerals or impurities, is actually a pretty poor conductor of electricity. It's those pesky impurities, like salts and minerals, that make water the electric conductor we typically think of. So while it's always wise to be cautious around electrical appliances near water, remember that pure H2O is a different story altogether. 2. Genetics and race. Do you remember being taught about different human races while you were in school? Well, nothing gives me more joy than to announce that the concept of biological race is more outdated than we thought. While humans have a great deal of genetic diversity, we can't clearly differentiate between races on the basis of our genes. What we think of as race is actually a social construct based on a mix of physical traits and cultural factors that change depending on who you ask and where you are. So while we might look different from each other, the idea of separate human races isn't supported by genetics at all. We're all part of one big, diverse human family. 1. The game of baseball. Do you remember those history lessons about Abner Doubleday inventing baseball? That lesson has been debunked as a wayward swing and a total miss when it comes to historical accuracy. Baseball wasn't invented by any one single person at all. It's actually a combination of a lot of similar games that evolved over time, which slowly transformed into the sport that we've all come to know and love today. So while Doubleday might have his name on a field, the real story of baseball's origins boils down to a team effort. So, did your school teach you any of these? Let me know in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and check out our social medias, including my personal ones, links in that description. And if you like this video, you'll want to check out 25 most ridiculous things you won't believe are banned in schools, because trust me, you will not. Look, some things definitely shouldn't be in schools. Others? Come on. Click here. Try this. Oh man, I remember doing this one. This was like 5 years, maybe 7 years ago. So check that one out. You'll probably be frustrated by the end of it, but check it out.